Goyaweti. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Lukanik. I am Wendat of the Huron-Wendat Nation of Wendake, Quebec, and I'm also an assistant professor at the University of Victoria.
I'm Eva Tchaikovska-Higgins, and I'm a professor in Indigenous Education and Humanities at the University of Victoria. We're coming to you today from the traditional territory of the Lekwungen peoples on whose lands the University of Victoria stands. And we would like to very gratefully acknowledge and respect these territories and also the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Saanich peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. Our presentation today is going to focus on the MILR program, which is the Masters of Indigenous Language Revitalization program. It's a graduate program focused on training Indigenous leaders and scholars in Indigenous language revitalization. We're going to talk about its history, its purpose, its structure, and some of the students, and also the ways in which the program attempts to contribute to transforming exclusionary spaces on campus. Megan and I are here today representing the team who put the presentation together, and also the people who have taught in the program in the past year. The programs, the graduate program in Indigenous language revitalization that we're going to talk about was informed by the development of a number of undergraduate programs over the years. And those in turn were informed by a long history of research and partnership on, with, and for Indigenous languages, and also research and teaching by Indigenous scholars at the University of Victoria. In the 1970s and 80s, the Faculty of Education and the Department of Linguistics partnered together to develop the NILDEP and the NILT programs, whose purposes were to train local First Nations instructors. And those programs were developed through this perspective that was put forward in the proposal for the programs by Jeff O'Grady in 1972. And he wrote at that time that the duty of linguists in Western Canada is to give every possible kind of encouragement and assistance to people who desire involvement on any level whatever in matters relating to their languages. In the 2000s, from the early 2000s to about 2012, there were several undergraduate programs developed at the University of Victoria. All of them were developed with extensive community consultation. And in the case of the DSTC and the Certificate in Indigenous Language Revitalization, they were initiated by community groups. These programs fed into the development of the master's program. And one of the things that's important to note here is that to the extent that it was possible, the programs have been offered in community, they've been offered in cohort models, they've involved courses in language learning and teaching, and also linguistics courses, and again, developed with a lot of extensive community consultation. The graduate programs involve, in particular, the MILR program, and that is situated in the Department of Indigenous Education in partnership with linguistics. There's a MILR advisory circle that involves members of Indigenous education, linguistics, and also community. And the programs were developed with extensive community consultation across BC, the whole of the province. And that consultation was led by and was also based on the vision of Dr. Lorna Wanosta-Williams, who was a faculty member at the University of Victoria at that time. The MILR program has 3 credentials. One is Masters of Education, which involves coursework on a project. The second is a Master of Arts, which involves a thesis as well as coursework. And then the third is a graduate certificate, which involves coursework. And subsequent to that, in 2019, We've accepted a number of PhD students through a special arrangement. And these PhD students in Indigenous language revitalization are situated in Indigenous education. The program is structured in such a way that the first 4 courses constitute the graduate certificate, and there are 2 Indigenous education courses, the first of which is an Indigenous epistemologies course, and 2 linguistics courses. And then in the second part of the program, there are courses in leadership and governance, in community-based initiatives, in linguistics, and in applied linguistics as well, and in research methods.
So now that Eva has shared a little bit of the history of the development of this program, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the purpose of the program and what it looks like today. So the primary purpose of the MILR program is to recognize, further develop, and provide accreditation for the skills, knowledge, and expertise that already exists amongst ILR activists and practitioners. Another purpose of the program is to develop Indigenous scholars who can participate in and make scholarly contributions to knowledge in the field of ILR. And these contributions also privilege Indigenous knowledges and epistemologies. And thirdly, the purpose of the program is to provide students with additional skills in language revitalization, theory, practice, and leadership. They come in with quite a lot already to support the work that they're doing in their own communities. So as Eva mentioned, there are 2 possibilities in terms of credentials at the end of this program. So it can either be project-based, which would lead to an MEd, or thesis-based, which would lead to an MA. So all students are accepted to do a project-based MEd degree, and the focus is really on praxis, not so much on theory. And you can do research in and with your community and have that be primarily a community contribution, also a contribution to the field of ILR. And typically the writing for an MEd is shorter than it would be for an MA. The second option to do an MA is exceptional, and usually it's by permission. And it's for students who want to focus more on research. Maybe their topic is much bigger in scope and it requires a different level of commitment to the research and a longer writing piece. So who are the students who enroll in this program? So all of the students who come into this program have some background, if not extensive background, in ILR. And so many of them are working in the field with one or several roles as teachers, administrators, elders, activists, language learners. They're from communities across what we call Canada today. There's some also from the US who come through our program. And so how many students have we accepted so far? There have been 5 cohorts starting in 2012. We accept students every 2 years. There was 85 students that have been accepted as a whole, 4 of which are non-Indigenous, the rest being Indigenous students. As of right now, there are 55 students who have completed and graduated from the program with either MEd or an MA, 12 with a graduate certificate, and then we have our current cohort, which is is in progress and finishing up, and a handful have withdrawn from the program. So what do students do after they leave the program? A lot of them return to work in their community. Some accept new, bigger leadership roles, which this program prepares them to do. And 5 of them have gone on to PhDs after this program. So we wanted to give you an idea of the types of projects and theses that are created in the MILR program. The link at the top of the slide, well, there's 2 links there that you can look at the projects and theses that have been created by MILR graduates. So some of the topics that students have focused on in the MILR program include autoethnographies, community surveys, to do further language planning, interviews with silent speakers, with other speakers about particular topics like the creation of new words. Other students have done resource development for language in the home, language in their community, including handbooks, phrase books, lessons, dialogues, etc. And others have still done website development for resources. So quite a variety of topics. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about supporting our students. It's important for us that we honor protocols and practices about language, land, and community. So the MILR program is started in community, started in a community setting, not on campus, and it started on the land. The first course that they teach, that we teach and that they take, is focused on epistemologies, Indigenous epistemologies. Indigenizing classroom spaces is also one of the things that we prioritize when possible. We teach in the First Peoples House on campus. We incorporate Indigenous epistemologies, pedagogies, and research methodologies as an integral part of the coursework, the program, and individual courses and assessment. We follow a cohort model, as mentioned by Eva, with other types of programs, ILR programs that have been developed in the past. This includes a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring and networking, and we also are able to then mentor them as a group and guide them through university structures and protocols and expectations. Finally, another way that we support our students is trying to transform and indigenize the spaces and practices on campus. That includes pathways to registration. There's an option for exceptional entry if you do not have a prior university accreditation or credential. We try to help them negotiate bureaucratic and academic structures like registration, awards, and other processes. We help negotiate also human research ethics protocols. And also, they're allowed to, they're given opportunities to relay their concerns about that process directly to human research ethics at UVic. We think deeply about courses, about the course content, the course structure when in this program, and about decolonizing fields such as linguistics, the status quo is colonial. So we think deeply about how to do that in a better way for the purposes of ILR and for these students. And for projects, we think creatively about assessment within the confines of the courses and the program as a whole. So what do these students do? These students contribute quite a lot to UVic. They push UVic in direct ways and indirect ways to be a more welcoming place for Indigenous people and Indigenous students. And they change the spaces in order to make it a little easier for future cohorts of MILR students. They bring their languages with them to campus and their existing expertise into these spaces. We work and they work with Faculty of Graduate Studies for better funding and appropriate funding for them. The final oral defenses are held in and with community where that's possible. And the convocation and graduation ceremonies are often, there's lots of families and community members who participate in these ceremonies and come together. So our final thoughts. So Eva, if we look back at the history that Eva shared with us earlier in the presentation, we can think about the development of programming in ILR at UVic reflects these changes in the academic landscape and the political landscape. So it's really shifting from linguistics having a very prominent role in developing and administering these programs to allowing for the emergence of the field of Indigenous language revitalization to hold that space. And so second, we also wanted to bring up this point, which is made by Dr. Lorna Williams, about Indigenous language revitalization being multidisciplinary. So education, pedagogy, applied linguistics, including second language acquisition, linguistics, leadership, and social action. And finally, we wanted to just state that Indigenous language revitalization as a discipline is and must be grounded in Indigenous protocols, lands, epistemologies, knowledges, pedagogies, and methodologies. Question.